with the nails.
Right.
And that was, you know, most of the non-explosive type booby traps.
Right, right. So what's a mad minute?
Mad minute is on a fire base where everybody opens up. If you're sitting on a fire base sometime during the night, and this is just to keep people from trying to sneak in on you, you'd hear a whistle blow. And when the whistle blow, everybody around the perimeter opened up. Just everything you got.
Firing
Machine
out.
guns, M16s, grenade launchers. Some fire bases even had tripod-mounted miniguns. I mean, you just opened up. And, you know, then they'd blow another whistle and you stop firing. That was a mad minute. But one time, we're at Ashleyville. One time we were in a guarding mission on, I forget what it was. I'm not sure it was a bridge. I don't know. Some of the times it's hard to tell. And during the night, we're in this bunker, and during the night we heard track movement behind us, some type of tank movement behind us. I didn't think anything of it. Well, all of a sudden the whistle blew. And we started firing, and then all of a sudden, these explosions started going off over our head. Come to find out, a 40 millimeter dual-barreled anti-aircraft tank had come in behind us and was firing over our heads. And these 40 millimeter rounds were going over our heads, and you could see them flying out, and they were tracer rounds, and they changed color. So after they reached a certain distance, they went from red to green, and or whatever, yellow to this. I mean, it was just, but all of it was down there going,
So this anti-aircraft artillery piece, which is typically not firing at any aircraft, is used for ground support.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's firing over our heads, and we, you know, all of a sudden, eventually, you know, I mean, it took a couple of seconds to realize what was happening, but I mean, it was just, I mean, the fronts of those barrels had to be literally right over the top of our bunker.
Right.
Because the way the bunker was set up was like a lean-to.
Yep.
Okay, you had, it was dug out, you had a roof made of some type of wood, logs, whatever, sandbags on top of that, sandbags down the side, and then a field of fire opening, you know, foxhole type of thing with sandbags in front. That was a bunker. So sometime during the night, this thing had come in and positioned itself directly over our bunker, and when the mad minute went off, we almost went mad. You know, one of the things the Army gave you was plenty of toys to play with. You know what I mean? And if you were any type of gun enthusiast to begin with, you know, you got all these toys to play with. You know, I got the fire minigun. Yep. I got the fire machine guns. I got the 50 caliber machine guns, M60 machine guns. I mean, you get to fire all this stuff, and you know, if you weren't being shot at, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So how do you typically find out that your time in a combat zone comes to an end?
Well, my time in a combat zone, when I ended up in a long-range patrol unit because they found out later on down the line that I had fired a perfect score in riflery. And I got some very minor, quick, here's an M14 with a match barrel on it, an accurized barrel on it, and long-range scope. And we need a guy in a long-range patrol unit that's good at long-range shooting.
Which is typically called a LRP.
Yeah, a LRP. And so I ended up as the long-range shot artist for a LRP unit. And we did a lot of, you know, 5-man operations. And some of it I can talk about, some of it I can't. We spent a lot of time not in Vietnam. We spent some time in Cambodia before we were officially in Cambodia. And we actually went into Laos once too. So, I mean, it was...
you walk in or fly in?
Flown in, walk in. Usually there's a specific thing we were looking for, some type of unit or something like that. And then walked out to an LZ and picked up and flown out.
And typically not going to engage in combat, but just going to look.
Some things we intentionally went to engage. Some things we went to look. Part of the VC money trail was involved with drugs. So a couple of search and destroy mission on drug labs. Of course, I forget what they changed it to. It was no longer search and destroy because they didn't like that terminology. So anyway, and other times it was reconnaissance. But after I got out of that unit, which I spent about 5 months in, 6 months in, I got out, and they gave me an early release.
So how do you get that notice?
Well, when I got out, my unit was going home. The 4th ID was coming home in 70, because I was there till November 70.
Yep.
And that's when I said I almost ended up with the 101st. I almost got sent to the 101st up in Da Nang, up in the DMZ. But they decided they were going to give me the early out instead. So I got about 6 months off, and I got my early out.
Yeah.
And
so your flight home is called?
Freedom Flight.
Freedom Flight.
Out of the AO.
Military or civilian?
No, this is coming out of the jungle. Out of the jungle. I was on a fire base.
Okay, so you're in a helicopter?
Yeah, I'm in a helicopter, and I'm heading home. And as I'm loading on, one of my friends, as a matter of fact, was Dave Harvey, yelled at the pilot, "Freedom Flight for this guy." So he did 3 complete circles of the fire base, then went up as high as he possibly could and headed home. And
to stay out of weapons range.
Yeah, stay out of weapons range. And he even put me in a co-pilot seat on the way back. Got to fly it a little bit.
So the helicopter takes you back to a base camp.
Base camp.
And then
from base camp, I went C-47 to Quin Yon. Processed out of Quin Yon. Took a civilian flight, a civilian charter, from Quin Yon back to Fort Lewis, Washington. And those poor stewardesses.
Back when they were called stewardesses.
Yes, yes, those poor stewardesses. Now you have 100 and some odd GIs who haven't seen many round-eyed girls in a while. And they had some patience, those girls.
I'll bet.
Yeah, they had some patience.
Even more interesting conversations as opposed to the flight over.
Yeah. There were so many, "Hey, darling, what you doing when we land?" You know, that. So they were good-natured about it.
Yeah.
You know, because they got some pretty rude comments, but
I'm sure
I think they were warned. You know,
yeah.
Hey, these guys are combat soldiers. Are coming back from Vietnam. They haven't seen a white girl in a year and a half. So
yeah. So typically, when you got home, how was your reception? How were you treated? What did you encounter?
Friends were fine. But if you walked through an airport back then I flew military standby. You came in, you showed them a military ID, and if there was a seat in the plane, you got on it. And for considerably less price.
Yeah.
But if you walked through an airport, there was eventually somebody was going to yell out "baby killer" or spit at you, or you know, how many did you kill, big guy? You're proud of yourself, killer. That type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, the friends, the close friends, family, fine.
Yeah.
Though I did come back with an attitude, because it just seemed it wasn't being done the right way. You know what I mean?
So typically now, 40 years after the fact, going on 40 years after the fact, depending on when you entered the combat zone,
Yeah.
How do you find the reaction is now amongst
Oh,
people?
now it's, you know, much better. Now the people...
Do you occasionally run into somebody that kind of gives you some grief?
Not anymore.
No?
Not anymore.
They've forgotten.
Yeah, and the ones who haven't forgotten are making up for it.
Yeah.
Okay, they realized that don't blame the soldier for the politics.